So what are the living costs in Israel? What is the average salary? What are the average expenses of an Israeli family? I will talk all about it in this video. Travelers ask these kinds of questions all the time, and I have to say that I find it interesting. As a tour guide, we talk so much about history and archaeology, but at the end of the day, most of the questions I get are about life in Israel today, and I really like that. It shows that tourists see Israel not only the conflict and biblical sites, but also us, the Israelis themselves, and I think it is a good thing. Now, the currency in Israel is the shekel, but in order to make it easier for you guys, I will talk about money in terms of US dollars. I will also tell you about our expenses as a family, because the average numbers aren't always a good indicator. Sometimes I will compare the living costs in Israel to the living costs in Berlin, as this is what I know as I lived there for 7 years. And I think that having the experience of living in other places gives you a different perspective on lots of things. Not only the costs of apples or electricity, but perhaps more interesting, the way of life. Because the cost of living is not only an economical question, but also a social one. Now, mentioning the word Berlin in a video about living costs in Israel tickles many Israelis, because in 2013 there was a cost of living protest in Israel that started because of a Facebook post comparing prices of supermarket products in Berlin and Israel. The symbol of the protest was, you won't believe it, Milky, a chocolate pudding that costs 90 cents in Israel and 19 cents in Berlin. This mini Milky protest was connected to a larger cost of living protest that started in 2011. The symbol of that protest was tents, as a reference to the high prices of apartments in Israel. Living in Israel is more expensive than in many Western world countries. Life in Israel is 25% more expensive than in OECD countries. The OECD is basically the developed countries. In order to understand why, I want to talk about salaries, taxes, and living costs. So let's start with salaries. The average monthly salary in Israel is $2,900, but the median salary is $2,350. Medians means that half earn more than $2,350 and half earn less. But the salary is your gross pay, what you get before taxes and deductions. So I've asked two of my cousins to show me their paychecks. One is a teacher and one works in high-tech. High-tech in Israel is like a code name for a good salary. And if high-tech is the crown on top of the Israeli workforce, working for Google, Intel, Wix, then to do an exit is the diamond on top of the crown. To do an exit means that you founded your own startup company and then sold it to usually American company, and now you are a millionaire. But let's go back to the Israeli teachers, who are very far from being millionaires. A teacher with 15 years of experience gets $3,200 gross pay. From that, $300 goes on income tax, $150 on healthcare, $150 on social security, $250 on your pension, $90 on funds. This last deduction is actually your money, but the state encourages you to save it. And if you don't touch this money for 6 years, then you can withdraw it without paying taxes on it. So the net pay a teacher is left with is $2,260. Now my cousin who works in high-tech has 10 years experience and earns $9,500 gross. So already you can see that high-tech workers earn 3 times more than teachers. The taxes are of course much higher. The income tax on this is $2,400, social security $320, health insurance $400, $600 for funds and pension, and $870 for car expenses, which includes a new car, unlimited gas, and all the insurance and maintenance. This is something very common in high-tech. Most employees are provided with a company car, My mom had a car from her workplace, and my 3 brothers and I had a rule that the engine should never run cold. We use the company car all the time. This brings the net salary to a total of $4,900. It is not a lot, which is why in most households in Israel, both parents work. Now, what are the actual costs of living in Israel? I had a look at our expenses this month. The highest expense, you probably won't guess, maybe if you are an American you would, is the children's education. We have 3 kids, so after school daycare for school children is $250 a month. Kindergarten for our 3 years old is $600, so altogether it comes to $850. Next year it will be double that, as it costs $750 a month for children under 3. In Berlin, by the way, kindergarten is free. The parents receive in Germany 200 euros a month per child, whereas in Israel you get about $40 a month per child. And maternity leave is 14 months, whereas in Israel it lasts only 14 weeks. When I tell Israelis that, especially Israeli women, then they say they would have 4 kids if the situation in Israel was the same as it is in Berlin. I find it very interesting that German and European women have fewer children than Israeli women. In Israel, all of my friends have children. Even my gay friends have children. I think I have only one friend who has no children. In Berlin, about 70% of the people I know don't have children. I find it an absolutely fascinating topic, but it is not the topic of this video, so I will leave it there for now. I will also add that Berlin is very poor, cheap, and the social benefits are generous. Berlin doesn't represent Germany. In Israel, I can earn almost double what I earn in Berlin. Like in Berlin, a private tour is around $200 a day, and in Israel, it's around $350. The second highest expense is rent. Now, we pay very low rent, $600 a month, because our apartment is small, 60 square meters, and we live in the desert. In Tel Aviv, you would probably pay around 3 times as much. I would say $1,600. And then there is municipal property tax and community tax, which comes to $400. For electricity and water, we pay around $150. Car expenses are about $500. And this brings me to another big expense for every household in Israel, transportation. In Israel, you have to have a car. Most of my friends with families have 2 cars. Public transportation in Israel isn't good when compared to Europe. The Ottomans and the British have left us actually with a pretty good train infrastructure, but we haven't done so much with it for the last 70 years. By the way, most Israelis don't know this and don't even notice it, but the trains in Israel run like in the UK. So cars drive on the right and trains drive on the left. Anyway, in the last decade, Israelis have started to understand that public transportation is the answer, but it will take many years for Israel to catch up with the European standard. We only have 1 car, and because I believe that a car says a lot about who you are, I drive a brand new Mazda Lantis. At least it was new in 2002, but who cares? It's just a car. In Berlin, we didn't have a car, but it isn't really fair to compare life in a city to country life. Now, we spend about $800 a month on groceries, and I will add another $500 for other things. So altogether, it comes to around $3,800. And I would say that we have a very modest outgoings. All of my friends spend more than we do. So why is Israel so expensive? There are many reasons for it, and I will mention some of them. Israel has high military costs. The costs are double, not only to buy tanks, but also because of the 3 years mandatory service for all men. This means that young Israelis enter the workforce 3 years later and work and pay taxes for fewer years. Israel is an island. There is almost no trade with our neighbors, so everything needs to be imported. There is too much centralization and regulation. This is not a political statement. Those who have power, whether on the left or on the right, use it for their own good and against the interest of the people. Both the left, the workers' unions, like in the ports, and the right, the importers blocking parallel imports and competition, are to blame for the high costs of living in Israel. Another factor is the typical Israeli consumer who lives with I want it, I buy it mentality. Israelis live in the now, which has its upsides and its downsides. Now, my channel is primarily about traveling to Israel, so I will put a link here to a video about traveling here on a budget. I have some great tips that will save you a lot of money when visiting Israel. If you are Israeli and YouTube tells me that 15% of my viewers come from Israel and you have anything to add, then please do so, but in English, so the other 85% will understand you. Now, if you have watched this video until now, it means you probably liked it. So please show me some love and hit the like button. One of my next videos will be about tensions in the Israeli society. It will be a very interesting video. So please subscribe and hit the bell so you will get notified when I publish it. See you in the next video. Yalla bye.